After living in the US for a while, I noticed a very real problem. More often than not, what actually disrupts daily life isn't the kind of situation that sends you straight to the hospital. It is the small, everyday, trivial issues that quietly affect your state. Things like unstable sleep quality or discomfort after irregular eating habits, physical fluctuations from seasonal changes, or lingering fatigue after prolonged stress. These things don't make you collapse instantly, but they slowly drag down your rhythm, and in a place like the US, where healthcare costs are relatively high, and appointment cycles are not always fast, this feeling becomes even more noticeable. It makes you start thinking about a very practical question. Is there a way to prepare some basic care in advance within daily life? I'm not saying this as a replacement for any system, nor comparing methods. I simply started doing something very simple, growing medicinal herbs at home, gradually building my own household emergency preparedness system. At the beginning, it was really just a few plants, but slowly it became a habit, and later it required no deliberate effort. It just became a natural part of my everyday life. What is interesting is that when you look back, it has already formed a structure, a very simple but incredibly stable one. The core of this structure consists of 4 plants: mint, chamomile, lavender, and rosemary. Individually, they are all very ordinary, but when combined, they form a small but complete household system. What this system really changes is not the plants, but your perception of daily life. I started with mint, probably one of the easiest plants to grow. There is almost no barrier to entry. You don't even need seeds. A small cutting from a healthy stem is more than enough. You simply take a fresh mint stem, cut it, and insert it into soil. A simple pot with drainage holes is completely sufficient. The soil doesn't need to be special. Standard potting soil works perfectly. The key is drainage, because mint absolutely does not like waterlogging. When watering, the ideal condition is moist but not soggy. Something that feels damp to the touch, but does not retain excess water. Lighting is also simple. It does not require direct harsh sunlight. Indirect light from a windowsill or a partially shaded balcony works well. You will quickly notice that it grows very fast, sometimes so fast that you feel the need to prune it frequently. One very important lesson I learned is that mint should always be planted alone. Because it grows too aggressively, it can easily take over the space. In terms of usage, mint is extremely flexible. The most common use is brewing tea with fresh or dried leaves. It can also be added to cold water or other beverages. In the kitchen, it can even be used as a mild culinary herb for flavoring. In traditional herbal practice, mint is generally considered a daily use herb, commonly used in beverages and everyday dietary experiences, offering a refreshing sensation. Its value doesn't lie in complexity, but in its accessibility. It is always available, right when you actually need it. The second plant is chamomile, which follows a completely different rhythm. It is typically grown from seeds, spread over loose soil. Lightly cover them with a thin layer of soil and keep it consistently moist. This stage requires patience, because there is no immediate visible progress. It also requires sunlight, so place it in a well-lit area like a balcony. Once it begins to sprout, it develops very small leaves. It gradually enters its growth stage and eventually produces small white flowers. The entire process is quiet. There is no explosive growth, but it is steady. Its care is not complicated either. Just maintain consistent moisture without overwatering. There is no need for complex fertilization or intensive management. Once mature, the flowers are usually harvested and dried for tea preparation. This is by far its most common and practical use. In many traditional herbal practices, chamomile is often used as an evening beverage, functioning as a gentle, rhythm-regulating herbal tea. It is not a functional plant in a strong medicinal sense, but rather something that helps slow down the pace of life. The third plant is lavender, completely different from the previous two. It functions much more like a spatial plant. It has very clear environmental requirements: full sunlight and dry soil. If there is too much water, it actually performs worse. So its care principle is very simple: less water, good sunlight, and ventilation. At first, I made the mistake of thinking all plants needed frequent watering. But lavender is the exact opposite. It responds better when you interfere less. After adjusting my approach and placing it in a sunny location, with minimal intervention, it actually grew much better. Once it blooms, you can cut the flowers, dry them, and use them indoors. For example, placing them by your pillow, in closets, or making small sachets. The change it brings is not functional, but environmental. It subtly alters the sensory atmosphere of a space, giving a natural scent presence. The fourth plant is rosemary, the most stable of the four plants. It requires almost no complex care whatsoever. With sufficient sunlight and well-drained soil, it can grow continuously over time. It doesn't require constant attention, nor does it suddenly become problematic. It is the type of plant that truly thrives on simplicity. I propagated it through cuttings, placing a small stem into soil, where it slowly develops, roots completely on its own. In daily use, rosemary is more commonly used in the kitchen, such as in cooking roasted dishes, stews, or simple meals. It is not something used frequently, but something that is always present. When you place these four plants together, you realize they aren't isolated entities. Mint is a high-frequency, always available basic plant. Chamomile is a slow-paced, cyclical plant that requires patience. Lavender is a spatial plant that influences the environment. And rosemary is a long-term, stable, persistent plant. Combined, they form a simple but complete household system. This system itself is not complex and does not require high cost. But what it gradually changes is your way of living. You begin to realize that some things in your home aren't bought, but grown. You start observing their changes and participating in their growth cycles. Sometimes, simply glancing at them as you pass by is enough to make life feel just a little less tense. Over time, I came to understand something a bit more clearly. Many people do this not because they want to change life itself, but because they want a little more sense of control in daily life. In a world that is becoming faster and more expensive, this basic sense of controllability becomes increasingly important. It doesn't change your life structure, but it changes your relationship with life. You are no longer just consuming life. You begin to participate in it. It is a small change, but a continuous one. If you want to try it, you don't need to start with anything complicated. One pot of mint is enough, then gradually add chamomile. Then you can add the lavender and the rosemary. You will find that this is not a project, but the formation of a completely new rhythm of life. Finally, returning to the original idea, the home herbal emergency preparedness system isn't really about herbs themselves, nor is it about their specific uses. It is about a more fundamental way of living, not just reacting to life, but preparing a little in advance. When such a structure exists, life doesn't necessarily become easier, but it does become a bit more stable. That is all, and I'm genuinely curious. If you were to start this, which plant would you choose first? Mint, which gives immediate results, or chamomile, which requires patience, or lavender and rosemary, which are more long-term and stable? You can tell me in the comments. I wonder whether different choices might actually reflect different rhythms of life.